Have you ever had a dream so real that you woke up reaching for someone who wasn't there? Now imagine that feeling doesn't fade with the sunrise. Imagine you're a soldier in a war that officially doesn't exist, and one day you look around your patrol vehicle and realize you're the only one who remembers the other 3 seats were ever filled. Your commander says you've always worked alone. Your logbooks are blank. The barracks room you swore you shared with your best friend now has a single bunk, a single locker, a single toothbrush. You're not crazy. You're a survivor of something that doesn't want to be remembered. And the worst part? It's not done erasing. This is the story of the one person who noticed, the one who fought back, and the one who learned that in some wars, the enemy isn't trying to kill you. It's trying to prove you were never there at all. The dust on Firebase Phoenix tasted like burnt metal and old regret. I remember that because I was spitting it out for the 3rd time that morning, trying to clear my throat enough to call a grid coordinate into the radio. My hands were shaking, not from fear, not yet, from the cold that lived inside the mountain pass, even in July. We've been up for 36 hours, the kind of tired that makes your bones feel borrowed from someone else's corpse. Bravo 6, this is Bravo Actual. Confirm eyes on the target compound. Over. The radio crackled, nothing back. I pressed the handset harder against my ear, the plastic slick with sweat, and something darker, hydraulic fluid from the last time the MRAP took a hit. Bravo 6, do you copy? Over. Static. Then a voice thin and distant like it was coming from the bottom of a well. Bravo Actual. 6's say again. That was Lieutenant Cross. He sounded wrong. Not injured wrong. Erased wrong. Like someone had taken his voice and ironed out the creases of his personality. Cross, where are you? I asked. You were supposed to be at the secondary overlook 20 minutes ago. A long pause. I could hear him breathing, the wet rattle of someone who'd been chewing tobacco to stay awake. I'm at the overlook, Sergeant. I've been here. Alone. Alone. The word hung in the thin mountain air like a bad omen. Because Lieutenant Cross wasn't supposed to be alone. He'd left the firebase with 3 soldiers. Specialist Ryan Oakes, a kid from Ohio who could field strip a 240B blindfolded, and who laughed like a drain pipe. Private First Class Delia Deli Henson, our medic who kept a secret stash of instant coffee in her helmet liner and had once stitched my arm closed while singing old country songs off-key. And Corporal Marcus Webb, the squad senior rifleman, a quiet man from Detroit who had a wife back home expecting twins and who carried a worn paperback of 100 Years of Solitude in his plate carrier. For people. For voices. For heartbeats that had been part of my world for 11 months of a deployment that felt like 11 lifetimes. Cross, listen to me carefully, I said, keeping my voice level the way they teach you in leadership school. Calm as still water, even when the dam is cracking. Where are Oakes, Henson, and Webb? Another pause. Longer this time. When Cross spoke again, his voice had shifted into something that made my stomach clench. Sergeant who? I lowered the handset, stared at the dust swirling across the firebase's inner courtyard. Behind me, the MRAP's engine ticked as it cooled. Ahead, the mountain pass stretched like a dark bruise across the horizon. Somewhere up there, my people were waiting for me. Or they weren't. Cross, I said slowly, Specialist Ryan Oakes. PFC Delia Henson. Corporal Marcus Webb. Your fire team. You left with them at 0400. The static seemed to deepen, to take on texture. I'd heard a lot of things on military radios. Enemy chatter, artillery coordinates, the screaming of men who'd just watched their world end. I never heard silence that sounded hungry before. Sergeant Khan, Cross said finally, and his voice was wrong in a way I couldn't name, like hearing a recording of someone you knew playing backward. I don't know those names. I've been on this overlook since 0400. Alone. There's only one set of footprints in the frost up here. I hung up the radio. Not because I was supposed to, because my hands made the decision before my brain could catch up. I turned and walked back toward the operations tent. The firebase was small, a scratched-out wound in the side of a mountain that the Army had decided was strategically valuable 3 rotations ago, and that everyone since had been trying to forget. 47 personnel at full strength. Tents the color of old Band-Aids. A single HESCO barrier wall that the locals kept stealing chunks from for building materials. And me, Sergeant First Class Miracon, 29 years old, 3 deployments, 2 languages, 1 Bronze Star with a V device that I kept in a sock because wearing it felt like advertising. The ops tent smelled like burned coffee and desperation. I ducked through the flap and found Captain Renner hunched over a map table, his reading glasses perched on his nose like a man trying to convince himself he was still young enough to need them. "Sir," I said, "we have a problem." Renner didn't look up. He was tracing a route with his finger, a route I recognized, the patrol path we'd walked yesterday. Me, him, and 8 others. "There's always a problem, Con." "Specify." "Lieutenant Cross is reporting that he's alone on the secondary overlook. He says he doesn't remember leaving with Oakes, Henson, and Webb." Renner's fingers stopped moving. He looked up slowly, and the expression on his face was one I'd never seen before. Not fear, not confusion. Recognition. Like I'd just said the password to a club he'd been waiting for me to find. "Say that again," he said quietly. "Cross doesn't remember his fire team. He says he's been alone since 0400. Sir, I talked to those 3 at 0300. Henson made me eat a protein bar. Oakes was complaining about his boots. Webb showed me a picture of the ultrasound." Renner stood up. He was a short man, compact, the kind of leader who didn't raise his voice because he never needed to. "Sergeant, when was the last time you saw them?" "Before they left for the overlook." "No," he said, and his voice dropped so low I had to lean in. "When was the last time anyone else saw them?" The question hit me like a physical thing. I thought about it. Really thought about it. The morning meal. Had anyone else talked to Henson? The weapons draw. Had anyone else watched Oakes check his firing pin? The pre-mission brief. Had anyone else made eye contact with Webb? I couldn't remember. I could remember my interactions with them. Vividly. Henson's laugh. Oakes's stupid joke about the lieutenant's mustache. Webb's quiet nod when I gave the order. But the faces around them, the other soldiers, the other conversations, those were fog. Like someone had taken a photo and carefully blurred the background until only the subject remained. "Sir," I said, and my voice sounded small in a way I hated, "I think something's wrong." Renner pulled me aside, away from the map table, away from the corporal who was typing on a laptop, and the private who was cleaning a rifle in the corner. He put a hand on my shoulder, and I could feel him trembling. Not cold, not fear, something else. "You're the 4th person to come to me with this week," he said. "Different soldiers, different teams, same story. Captain, I remember people who aren't here. Captain, my squad was bigger yesterday. Captain, I keep calling for someone, and no one knows who I'm talking about." My blood went cold. "What did you do?" I checked the personnel manifests, the morning reports, the logbooks. He shook his head slowly. "According to every piece of paper in this firebase, those people never existed. According to the battalion HQ, our rosters have been stable for 6 months. According to the Pentagon, we're at exactly our authorized strength." "That's impossible," I said. "Webb's wife is pregnant with twins." He showed me the ultrasound photo. I held it in my hands. Renner's hand tightened on my shoulder. "Sergeant, I believe you. But I need you to understand something. We're not equipped for this. We're not trained for this. The enemy we're fighting, the one in the mountains, the one with the IEDs, and the ambushes, that enemy is real. But I think there's another one. And I think it's been here longer than we have." He let go of me and walked back to the map table. For a moment, he looked like a man standing on the edge of a cliff, trying to decide whether to jump or turn back. "Don't tell anyone else what you've told me," he said. "Not yet. Go find Cross. Bring him back. And Con," he looked up, and his eyes were old in a young face. "If you see anything that doesn't make sense, don't try to explain it. Just remember it. Remember it hard. Because I think remembering might be the only weapon we have." I grabbed my rifle, my helmet, my radio. I walked past the HESCO wall, past the gun truck that had 3 names painted on the side. Names I suddenly couldn't read, like they were written in a language I'd forgotten overnight. I stepped onto the trail that led up the mountain, and I didn't look back. The climb took 45 minutes. The air got thinner. The light got grayer. By the time I reached the secondary overlook, my lungs were burning, and my ears were ringing with a frequency that wasn't natural, like someone had tuned a radio to a station that didn't exist and turned up the volume inside my skull. Lieutenant Cross was sitting on a rock. He was alone. His rifle was across his knees. His helmet was off, resting beside him like a patient waiting for treatment. His face was pale, not from cold, from the particular gray of someone who'd seen something and couldn't unsee it. "Sergeant," he said as I approached. His voice was flat. "Hello. You came." "Of course I came. Where are your people, Cross?" He looked at me then, and I saw it, the thing that had hollowed him out. Not injury, not exhaustion, absence. Like someone had reached into his chest and pulled out the part of him that believed in the reality of other people. "Sergeant," he said, very quietly, "I don't have people. I've never had people. I've been alone in this unit since I arrived. I've been alone in every unit I've ever served in. I've been alone so long that I don't remember what it feels like to have someone else's name on my lips." I knelt in front of him, grabbed his shoulders, forced him to look at me. "Cross, that's not true. You had Oaks. Henson, Webb. You played poker with him last Tuesday. You lent Oaks $20 for the PX run. You stop." He closed his eyes. "Please stop. Every time you say their names, it feels like someone's pulling a thread out of my chest. I don't want to remember people who were never there. They were there. Were they?" He opened his eyes, and there was something in them that I'd only seen once before, in a soldier who'd watched his best friend step on a pressure plate. Not grief. Something worse. Something that looked like the end of a story that hadn't been written yet. "Sergeant, if they were real, where are they? If they existed, why can't anyone else remember them? Why are there no records? No photos? No footprints in the frost?" I looked down at the ground around his rock. Frost. Untouched. One set of prints leading up the trail, his. One set of prints leading back down, mine. No third set. No fourth. No evidence that anyone else had ever been here at all. "I remember them," I said, and my voice cracked on the last syllable. "I remember Oakes's laugh. I remember Henson's singing. I remember Webb's book. I remember." "Then you're next," Cross said. And he wasn't looking at me anymore. He was looking past me, down the mountain, toward the fire base. Whatever's doing this, it started with the people no one was paying attention to. The specialists, the privates, the corporals, and now it's moving up. You remember them because you were close to them. But how many people remember you, Sergeant? If you disappeared right now, who would know you were ever here? The question landed like a bullet. I thought about my parents in Chicago. My father, who sent me care packages full of homemade baklava that always arrived crushed. My mother, who called every Sunday and asked if I was being careful. I thought about my old squad from my first deployment, scattered across bases and reserves and civilian lives. I thought about the friends I'd made in this unit, the ones I ate with, trained with, bled with. How many of them would remember me if I stopped existing? How many of them had already stopped remembering Oaks? Crossed it up, picked up his rifle, sling it over his shoulder with the mechanical precision of someone running on autopilot. "I'm going back to the firebase, Sergeant. I'm going to request a medical evacuation. I'm going to tell them I'm having a mental health crisis, because that's the only language the Army understands for things like this. And then I'm going to leave this mountain and never come back." "Cross, don't." He held up a hand. "Don't tell me to be strong. Don't tell me to fight. I don't know what's out here, but I know what it did to my memory of those three. I can't feel them anymore, Con. I can't remember their faces. I can't remember their voices. I know I should be able to, but there's just nothing. Like someone took an eraser to my brain and only left the parts that didn't matter." He started down the trail. I watched him go, and for a moment I almost followed, almost gave in to the same fear that was driving him down the mountain. But I didn't, because I heard something, faint, distant, coming from the rocks above the overlook. Singing, off-key, country western, the worst rendition of Jolene I had ever heard in my life. "Henson," I whispered. The singing stopped. A moment of silence, so complete that I could hear my own heartbeat. And then a voice, thin and far away, like someone calling from the other side of a door that was slowly closing. "Sergeant? Sergeant, is that you?" I ran. I scrambled up the rocks, ignoring the scrape of stone against my knees, the way my rifle banged against my spine. The trail above the overlook was narrow, barely a goat path, choked with scrub brush and the bones of small animals that had come here to die. The voice came again, closer this time. "Con, we're here. We're over here. We can't move. Something's wrong with our legs." I crested a ridge and found them. Oaks, Henson, Webb. They were sitting against a rock outcropping, arranged in a neat row like patients in a triage line. Their eyes were open. Their mouths were moving. Their hands were reaching toward me. But they weren't moving. Not because they were tied. Not because they were injured. Because they were fading. Not dying, fading. Like old photographs left in the sun. I could see the rock through their chests. I could see the sky through their faces. They were becoming transparent, pixel by pixel, memory by memory. "Oh my God," I breathed. Henson smiled at me, and her smile was the only solid thing about her. Hey, Sergeant, you brought coffee, right? I dropped to my knees in front of her, reached for her hand. My fingers passed through hers like smoke. Henson, what happened? What did this to you? Don't know, she said. Her voice was steady, but I could see the fear in her eyes, the fear of someone watching themselves become nothing. We were walking up to the overlook. Cross was ahead, and then he just stopped, turned around, looked right through us, walked away. He doesn't remember you, I said. None of the records show you. No one in the firebase knows your names. Webb spoke for the first time. His voice was deeper than I remembered, rougher, like he'd been screaming into a void. It's the mountain, Sergeant. The mountain is hungry, and we're not the first. What do you mean? Oaks answered. He was the youngest, the most scared, and he wasn't bothering to hide it. Tears were cutting tracks through the dust on his cheeks, but the tears were fading too, becoming translucent before they hit the ground. When we were walking up, Webb saw something. Old stuff. Shell casings from the Soviet War. A boot from, I don't know, maybe the British? Maybe older. This mountain has been eating soldiers for a long time. Sergeant. We just didn't notice because we were too busy looking for IEDs. I looked at Webb. He nodded slowly. There's a thing up here, he said. I don't know if it's a ghost, or a demon, or just a place that's wrong. But it feeds on memory. On connection. It doesn't kill you. It makes it so you were never born. No one remembers you. No one mourns you. You just stop. Then, how are you still here? I asked. If no one remembers you, why aren't you gone? Henson's smile flickered like a bulb on a dying string. Because you remember us, Sergeant. You're holding us here. Every time you think our names, every time you remember something we did or said, you're throwing us a rope. But you're only one person, and we're three, and the mountain is old and patient and very, very hungry. I understood then. Not everything, but enough. The mountain wasn't killing my people. It was erasing them. And the only thing keeping them from being completely erased was my memory of them. My alone, fragile, human memory. How do I stop it? I asked. Webb shook his head. You don't. You can't fight a place. You can't shoot a concept. The only thing you can do is leave. Take us with you. Keep remembering us until we're far enough away that the mountain can't reach us anymore. How far? I don't know, he said. But I know you can't do it alone. You need other people to remember us, too. You need to make us real again. I stood up, looked at my 3 fading soldiers. Oaks, who laughed like a drainpipe. Henson, who sang country songs while stitching wounds. Webb, who read magical realism and believed in things he couldn't see. I'm going to get help, I said. I'm going to bring people up here. People who will see you. People who will remember you. They won't, Henson said gently. They can't. The mountain won't let them. We're invisible to anyone who wasn't close to us before we started fading. That's why Cross couldn't see us. That's why no one at the firebase remembers us. The only person left who can see us is you. Then, I'll carry you, I said, one by one. I'll drag you down the mountain if I have to. Sergeant, Webb said, and his voice was heavy with something that might have been gratitude or might have been grief. We weigh nothing. We're almost gone. You could put all 3 of us in your pockets and not feel the difference. The problem isn't carrying us. The problem is keeping us. What do you mean? Oaks pointed at the sky. It was getting darker. Not sunset, something else. Something that pressed down on the mountain like a hand. It's coming back, Sergeant. It knows you're here. It knows you're trying to take us away. And it's going to try to make you forget us too. I looked at my watch. 16:30. 4 hours of daylight left. For hours to get 3 fading soldiers down a mountain, past a hungry place, and back to a firebase full of people who couldn't see them. Stay here, I said. I'm going to find a way. I turned and ran back down the trail. Behind me, I heard Henson start singing again, softly this time a lullaby about leaving home and never coming back. I didn't look back. I couldn't, because I knew if I looked back and saw how much of them had faded in the last 5 minutes, I would have sat down on that mountain and let it eat me too. The firebase looked different when I got back. Wrong. Somehow like a photograph that had been slightly rotated. The tents were in the same places. The Hesco wall was still missing the same chunks. But the light had shifted, not the sun, the quality of visibility itself. Colors were duller. Shadows were longer. The whole base felt like it was holding its breath. I found Captain Renner in his quarters, a shipping container converted into something almost habitable. He was sitting on his cot, staring at a photograph in his hands. When I knocked on the door frame, he looked up with the expression of a man who'd been expecting bad news and was relieved to finally get it. "They're still there," I said. "Oaks, Henson, Webb. They're on the mountain, fading out of existence. And I'm the only one who can see them." Renner didn't ask how I knew. He didn't ask for proof. He just nodded slowly and held up the photograph. It was a unit photo, the whole firebase, 47 soldiers, arranged in 3 rows in front of the ops tent. I'd seen it 100 times. It hung on the wall of the mess tent. It was in the deployment scrapbook that someone was supposedly putting together. But in Renner's hands, it was wrong. There were gaps, empty spaces where people should have been standing. Not physically empty. The photo wasn't edited. But the people in those spaces were blurry, indistinct, like they'd been photographed through frosted glass. I counted at least 8 faces I couldn't quite make out. 8 soldiers whose features were dissolving into light. "It started 6 weeks ago," Renner said quietly. "A private named Ellison. Good kid. Quiet. No one really knew him. One day, he just wasn't there anymore. His bunk was empty. His gear was gone. The logbooks showed he'd never been assigned to us. I was the only one who remembered him. What happened to him?" Renner set the photo down on the cot. His hands were steady, but his voice wasn't. "I tried to save him. I went looking for him in the mountains. I found him, sort of. He was like your 3. Fading. Transparent. He told me the same thing yours probably told you. The mountain eats memory. It started with the loners, the quiet ones, the people no one paid attention to, and now it's moving up the chain. Why didn't you tell anyone?" "I did. I told battalion. I told the chaplain. I told the brigade psychiatrist." He laughed, a short, bitter sound. "They all said the same thing. Stress, sleep deprivation, high operational tempo burnout. They sent me to a rest camp for 3 days. When I came back, I couldn't remember Ellison's face anymore. I couldn't remember his voice. All I had left was the memory of having a memory, like a scar where a wound used to be." I sat down across from him, on a footlocker full of things that probably didn't matter. "Sir, we have to do something. We can't just let them disappear. What would you have us do, Con?" He looked at me, and for the first time since I'd known him, I saw how tired he really was. Not deployment tired, existential tired. The fatigue of watching reality come unglued and being powerless to fix it. We're 47 soldiers on a mountain that's been eating people for centuries. We don't have the equipment, the training, or the authority to fight something like this. The only weapons we have are our memories, and the mountain is better at forgetting than we are at remembering. Then we make other people remember," I said. "We document everything. Photos, videos, written statements. We send them down to battalion, to division, to the Pentagon. We make it impossible for them to ignore." Renner shook his head. "I tried that. I wrote a report about Ellison. Detailed, specific. Timestamps, locations, witness statements. I sent it through official channels. 3 days later, I got a response. It was a form letter thanking me for my report on ammunition expenditure. The original report, the one I wrote about Ellison, had been replaced. No one at battalion remembered receiving it. No one at division remembered reading it. It was like I'd never written it at all. The cold I'd felt on the mountain was back, spreading through my chest like ice water. The mountain doesn't just erase people. It erases evidence. It erases everything, Renner said, except the people who were close enough to the fading to notice. And even they don't last long. I've been tracking it, Con. Every time someone disappears, the people who remember them start forgetting faster. It's like a chain reaction. The more you hold on, the faster the mountain pulls you in. How many have we lost? Renner picked up the photograph again, studied the blurry faces, the dissolving shapes. 6 weeks ago, Ellison. Then, a week later, 2 more. Then 4. Then 8. The rate is accelerating. At this point, I think we're losing someone every day. But I can't be sure because I can't remember them all. Every morning I wake up, and there are fewer names in my head. Fewer faces. Fewer laughs. I thought about Oaks, Henson, and Webb sitting on that mountain, fading by the minute. I thought about the 8 blurry faces in the photograph. 8 people I might have eaten with, trained with, fought alongside. 8 people whose names I would never know. Sir, I said, I need you to do something for me. Anything. I need you to remember. Right now. In this moment. I need you to remember Oaks, Henson, and Webb. Not because you knew them, you didn't, not really. But because I need someone else to hold them in their head. The mountain can't erase them if there are two of us holding on. Renner closed his eyes. His lips moved silently, repeating names like a prayer. Oaks, Henson, Webb. Oaks, Henson, Webb. What do you see? I asked. Faces, he said. Blurry, like trying to look at something underwater. But they're there. I can feel them. Hold on to that feeling. Don't let go. I stood up, grabbed my rifle, checked my magazine. 30 rounds of 5.56, not that bullets would help. Check my knife, ceramic, non-metallic, good for cutting through rope and maybe through mysteries. Where are you going? Renner asked. Back up the mountain. I'm bringing them home. Con, you can't. You'll fade too. You'll end up like them. Half remembered, half gone, a ghost on a mountain full of ghosts. I looked at him, at his tired eyes and his steady hands and his photograph full of dissolving people. Sir, with respect, I've been fading my whole life. I'm a woman. I'm brown. I'm a soldier in a war that no one back home wants to think about. I know what it feels like to be forgotten before you're even gone. But those three up there, they trusted me. They followed me. They bled for me. And I'm not going to let a mountain tell me they never existed. I turned and walked out of the shipping container. Behind me, I heard Renner start speaking again, Oaks, Henson, Webb, over and over a litany against the dark. The trail up the mountain was steeper than I remembered. Or maybe I was weaker. Every step felt like wading through concrete. The air was thinner, colder, and the ringing in my ears had become a low hum, like a generator running somewhere deep underground. I made it to the ridge in 30 minutes. The sun was lower now, painting the rocks in shades of orange and red that looked too vivid to be real. The kind of colors you see in old war photographs, beautiful and terrible and somehow dishonest. They were still there. Oaks, Henson, Webb, still sitting against the rock outcropping, still fading, but slower now. The transparency had stopped advancing. If anything, they looked a little more solid than before. Renner's remembering you, I said as I dropped to my knees beside them. He's holding you in his head. It's working. Henson smiled. It was a real smile this time, not a flicker. We felt it, like someone turned up the heat. Thank you, Sergeant. Don't thank me yet. We have to get you down a mountain. All the way down. Past the fire base. Past the valley. Past wherever the mountain's influence ends. Webb shook his head. It doesn't end, Sergeant. That's what we figured out while you were gone. The mountain isn't a place. It's a thing that lives in places. It's been here for centuries, maybe millennia, and it's spread its roots deep. You can leave the mountain, but you can't leave the mountain's memory of you. As long as it knows you existed, it can reach you. Then, how do we win? Oak spoke up. He was the youngest, the least experienced, but he had a kind of clarity that came from not knowing enough to be scared. We make it forget us. We erase ourselves from its memory before it erases us from reality. How do you make a mountain forget? Oaks pointed at the sky. The sun was almost gone now, and the first stars were coming out. But the stars were wrong. Too bright, too close, arranged in patterns I didn't recognize. It's not a mountain, Sergeant. It's a story. A really old story that's been told so many times that it's forgotten it's a story. It thinks it's real. It thinks it's permanent. But stories can be changed. Stories can be rewritten. And the only person who can rewrite this one is the person who remembers the most. They were all looking at me. No, I said, I'm not a writer. I'm a soldier. I shoot things and carry things and follow orders. You're also the only one who remembers us, Henson said gently. The only one who remembers what we looked like, what we sounded like, what we cared about. The mountain has been trying to make us into a story it can control. But you have the real story, Sergeant. The one with details. The one with laughter and bad singing and ultrasound photos. If you tell that story, if you tell it loud enough and long enough, maybe it'll overwrite the mountain's version. Maybe we'll become real again. Tell it to who? No one can see you. No one can hear you. Tell it to us, Webb said. We're the only audience that matters. Because we're the ones who are disappearing. If you can make us remember ourselves, if you can make us solid in our own minds, then the mountain can't take us. I sat down in the dirt, looked at my 3 fading soldiers. Oaks, who wanted to go home and open a motorcycle repair shop. Henson, who was saving up to buy her grandmother's farm. Webb, who was going to name his twins after characters from his favorite book. Okay, I said. Where do I start? At the beginning, Henson said. Tell us how we met. So I did. I told them about the first time I saw Oaks, fresh out of basic, so nervous that he dropped his weapon during the first formation. I told him about the way Henson had stitched up a local kid's arm after an IED blast, singing Crazy by Patsy Cline the whole time. I told him about Webb's quiet leadership, the way he'd once carried a wounded soldier 2 miles under fire without saying a word about it afterward. I told him about the jokes, the late-night card games, the way Oaks laughed like a drainpipe, the way Henson's coffee stash was hidden in her helmet liner, the way Webb's paperback was held together with duct tape and hope. I told them about the small moments, the ones that don't make it into after-action reports. The time Oaks saved a stray dog and named it after his ex-girlfriend. The time Henson got food poisoning from the local market and spent 12 hours in a latrine still singing. The time Webb showed me the ultrasound photo and said, "You're going to be their weird aunt, Sergeant." Sorry, I don't make the rules. As I talked, something changed. The transparency didn't reverse, not exactly. But it stopped, held steady. And the edges of their bodies, the parts that had been most faded, most ghost-like, began to sharpen. Not much. A little. Enough to notice. "It's working," Oaks breathed. "I can feel my hands again." "Keep going," Sergeant Henson said. "Don't stop." So I didn't stop. I told him about the bad things, too. The firefights. The friends we'd lost before the mountains started eating people. The night we'd been ambushed in a wadi, and Webb had pulled me behind a boulder just as a bullet passed through the space where my head had been. The time Henson had held a dying soldier's hand and told him his mother was proud of him, even though she'd never met the kid. I told them about the fear, the exhaustion, the way we kept going, not because we were brave, but because stopping meant letting the other person down. The stars were fully out now. The wrong stars, the 2 bright stars, arranged in constellations that spelled words I couldn't read. The mountain hummed beneath me, a deep vibration that I felt in my teeth and my bones. And in the middle of that wrongness, my 3 soldiers became a little more solid, a little more real, a little more there. "We need to move," Webb said finally. "The mountain knows what you're doing. It's going to try to stop you." Ow! As if in answer, the ground beneath us shuddered. Not an earthquake, something more focused, more intelligent. A rock slide began above us, small at first, then growing. Stones bounced past our position, then boulders, then chunks of rock the size of cars. "It's trying to bury us," Oaks said, "or at least bury the story." I looked at my 3 soldiers, still fading, still solidifying, still caught between existence and oblivion. "Can you walk?" I asked. Henson tested her legs. They held. Barely. "I think so. But not fast." Then we go slow, and we keep talking. Every step of the way. I tell the story. You listen. You remember. You hold on to each other. I helped Henson to her feet. Oak stood on his own, swaying like a newborn colt. Webb rose last, steady as always, his hand finding mine for just a moment. "Lead the way, Sergeant," he said. We started down the mountain. And the mountain fought back. It didn't fight with bullets or bombs. It fought with memory, with the slow, insidious erosion of everything we thought we knew. Every step I took, I felt something slipping away. Not names, not faces, but the connections between them. The why, the how, the reasons these people mattered. I kept talking, kept telling the story. But the words came harder now, like trying to run through deep water. I'd start a sentence about Oaks and forget where I was going. I'd mention Henson's singing and lose the melody in my head. I'd try to describe Webb's ultrasound photo and suddenly remember that I'd never actually seen it. Or had I? Or was that a memory the mountain was eating right now, in real time? "Keep going, Sergeant," Webb said from behind me. His voice was thinner now, more distant. "We're still here. We're still listening." "What was the name of the dog?" I asked suddenly. "The stray Oaks saved." "What did he name it?" Silence. Then Oaks, barely audible. "I don't remember. I know I named it after someone. Someone I loved. But I can't remember who." The mountain was winning. I stopped walking, turned around to face them. They were still there. 3 shapes in the darkness, 3 voices in the humming silence. But they were fading again. Faster now. The story wasn't enough anymore. The remembering wasn't enough. Because I was forgetting too. I couldn't remember Oaks's hometown. Couldn't remember Henson's grandmother's name. Couldn't remember the title of Webb's battered paperback. "I'm losing it," I said. "I'm losing you." "No," Henson said. And she stepped forward, her hand reaching for mine. This time, when our fingers touched, they didn't pass through. They met. Solid. Warm. Real. You're not losing us. You're making us. Every word you say, every memory you hold on to, you're building us back from nothing. That's not losing. That's creation. I looked at her hands, at her fingers wrapped around mine, at the way the transparency had receded from her wrist, her forearm, her shoulder. Ow, I whispered. Because you stopped trying to remember, she said, and started trying to believe. I didn't understand. Not then, but I would. The rest of the descent was a blur of darkness and stone and the constant, desperate rhythm of my voice telling stories I wasn't sure I remembered. The mountain threw everything it had at us. Avalanches, false trails, moments of crushing forgetfulness where I couldn't remember my own name. But I kept walking, kept talking, kept reaching back to make sure they were still there. And they were. Always. 3 hands in the darkness. 3 voices echoing my words back to me. 3 soldiers who refused to become a story that ended with, and then they were gone. We reached the fire base at midnight. The lights were on. The sentries were at their posts. The world was still turning, still normal, still oblivious to the war we'd been fighting on a mountain that didn't officially exist. I walked through the gate with Oaks on my left, Henson on my right, and Webb behind me. The sentries didn't see them. Of course they didn't. But they saw me. They saw a sergeant caked in dust and frost, holding hands with empty air, talking to people who weren't there. Sergeant Khan, the gate guard said, "Are you okay?" I looked at my soldiers, at their solid hands, their solid faces, their solid, unfading presence. "I'm fine," I said, "just bringing my team home." The debriefing took 4 hours. Captain Renner sat across from me in the ops tent, a tape recorder on the table between us, his face a careful mask of professional concern. 2 chairs down, the battalion psychiatrist, a major named Prasad who'd been flown in that morning, took notes on a yellow legal pad. His handwriting was neat. His expression was not. "So let me understand this," Prasad said slowly. "You're claiming that 3 soldiers, Specialist Ryan Oakes, Private First Class Delia Henson, and Corporal Marcus Webb, have been erased from existence by a supernatural force living in a mountain, and that you single-handedly reversed this erasure by telling them stories for 6 hours." "That's not what I'm claiming," I said. "That's what happened." Prasad exchanged a glance with Renner. Renner shrugged. "She's not lying, Major. I've known Sergeant Khan for 2 years. She doesn't lie. I'm not suggesting she's lying. I'm suggesting she's experiencing a stress-induced dissociative episode. It's common in high operational environments. The brain creates narratives to cope with trauma. The soldiers she's describing, Oakes, Henson, Webb, they don't appear in any personnel records. They're not on any rosters. They've never been assigned to this unit." "I know," I said. "That's what the mountain does." Prasad set down his pen. He was a good man. I could see that. Kind eyes. Steady hands. The kind of psychiatrist who actually cared about the soldiers he treated. But he was looking at me the way you look at a puzzle with missing pieces. "Sergeant, I want to help you. But to do that, I need you to engage with the possibility that these soldiers might not be real. That they might be manifestations of stress, loneliness, or grief." I thought about Oakes's laugh, Henson's singing, Webb's quiet nod. I thought about the ultrasound photo I'd never actually seen, and the stray dog I couldn't quite remember, and the title of the paperback that kept slipping through my fingers like water. "They're real," I said. "They're standing right behind you." Prasad turned, looked at the empty space behind his chair, looked back at me. His expression hadn't changed, still kind, still concerned, still utterly convinced that I was a broken thing in need of fixing. "Sergeant," he said gently, "there's no one there." I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab him by the collar and force him to see what I saw. 3 soldiers in dusty uniforms, standing at parade rest, waiting for orders. Oakes with his stupid grin. Henson with her coffee-stained helmet. Webb with his paperback held together by duct tape and hope. But I couldn't make him see. The mountain had already decided they weren't real. And the mountain was older and stronger and more patient than any psychiatrist. "Thank you for your time, Major," I said. "I'm gonna go check on my squad now." I stood up, walked out of the ops tent, felt 3 pairs of eyes on my back, 2 that could see me, and 3 that only I could see. They were waiting for me outside. Henson was leaning against the Hesco wall, arms crossed, watching the sunset. Oakes was kicking rocks. Webb was reading his paperback, or pretending to, since I still couldn't remember the title. "He didn't believe you," Henson said. No one believes me. That's the point. What do we do now? Oaks asked. I looked at the mountain. It loomed over the firebase, dark and hungry and patient. It had lost this round. 3 soldiers it couldn't erase because I refused to stop remembering them. But it hadn't lost the war. It was still there, still waiting, still eating one memory at a time. We fight, I said. The only way we know how. The next morning, I started the logbook. Not the official logbook. The mountain would eat that. A private logbook. Hidden. Handwritten. A record of every soldier who'd served on Firebase Phoenix since the beginning of the deployment. Names, faces, hometowns, favorite foods, bad jokes, secret fears, the color of their eyes, the sound of their laughter. I wrote in it every day. When I woke up, before I went to sleep, in the middle of firefights, in the back of the MRAP, in the quiet moments between patrols when the mountain hummed its hungry song, and I felt my memories starting to slip. Every time I forgot something, I went back to the logbook. Read the entry. Relearn the name. Rebuilt the face. Reminded myself that these people existed, that they had laughed and bled and died and faded, and that I was the only one left who remembered. Renner helped when he could. He couldn't see my 3, Oaks, Henson, Webb, but he could see the gaps in the unit photo. He could feel the absences. He started his own logbook, his own private war against forgetting. Sometimes we compared notes. Sometimes we found matches, soldiers we both remembered, names that appeared in both our books. Sometimes we didn't. Sometimes the mountain won a small battle, and a name disappeared from one of our logbooks, and we couldn't remember ever writing it. The weeks turned into months. The deployment ended. We rotated out of Firebase Phoenix, back to the forward operating base, back to the regional command, back to the airport, back to the plane that would take us home. My 3 soldiers came with me. They sat in the empty seats on the C-130. They stood in the baggage claim at Bagram. They walked through customs at Ramstein, invisible to everyone but me. Oaks complained about the flight. Henson sang off-key over the engine noise. Webb read his paperback and said nothing, but his presence was a weight in the seat beside me, solid and real and there. The mountain couldn't reach us in the air. I felt at the moment we crossed the range. The hum faded, the wrongness receded, and for the first time in months, I could think clearly, could remember clearly. The logbook entries were no longer a desperate scramble against erosion. They were just words on a page. Beautiful, ordinary, permanent words. We made it, Henson said. She was looking out the window at the clouds below, her face soft with something that might have been wonder. We actually made it. You made it, I said. I just carried you. No, Webb said. He closed his paperback. I still couldn't read the title, but I could see the cover now, a swirl of colors that might have been a jungle or might have been a dream. You did more than carry us. You made us real. Every time you wrote our names, every time you told our stories, every time you refused to let us fade, you weren't carrying us. You were creating us. I don't understand. He smiled. It was the first time I'd seen him smile in months. The mountain wasn't erasing us, Sergeant. It was trying to replace us, with its own version, its own story. A story where we never existed, where we were just gaps in a photograph, just absences in a logbook. But you gave us a different story. Your story, the real one. And stories are stronger than mountains. The plane landed. We filed out onto the tarmac, into the cold German air, into the fluorescent lights of the passenger terminal. My 3 soldiers walked beside me, visible now to no one but me, real now to no one but me. But they were real. I knew it. And that was enough. I was discharged 6 months later. Honorable. Full benefits. A medal I didn't want, and a pension I couldn't live on. I went back to Chicago, to my parents' house, to the neighborhood where I'd learned to ride a bike, and fallen in love for the first time, and decided to join the Army because I wanted to be part of something bigger than myself. I kept the logbook, kept writing in it. Every day, even when it hurt. Even when the memories felt like wounds that wouldn't close. Oaks, Henson, and Webb stayed with me. They sat on my parents' couch. They ate my mother's baklava. They listened to my father's stories about the old country. They were invisible, inaudible, intangible to everyone but me. But they were there. And that was enough. 3 years later, I got a letter. Handwritten. Postmarked from Detroit. Dear Sergeant Kahn, I don't know if you remember me. My name is Marcus Webb. I was a corporal in your squad on Firebase Phoenix. I was one of the ones who faded. One of the ones you saved. I've been trying to write this letter for 2 years. Every time I sit down to write it, I forget what I'm doing. I forget your name. I forget my own name. The mountain is far away, but its roots run deep, and sometimes I feel it tugging at the edges of my memory, trying to pull me back into the gap. But I remember you. I remember the night you carried us down the mountain. I remember the stories you told. I remember the logbook. My wife. You remember her, the one who was pregnant with twins. She doesn't see me the way you do. To her, I'm just a man who came home from the war a little strange, a little forgetful, a little lost. She doesn't know that I'm a ghost who was given back his body by a sergeant who refused to let him go. The twins are 3 now, a boy and a girl. I named them after characters in my favorite book. I can't remember the title. The mountain took that, but I remember the names. Aureliano and Remedios. I remember because you wrote them down. Thank you, Sergeant. Thank you for remembering. Thank you for fighting. Thank you for carrying us when we couldn't carry ourselves. I'm real. I'm here. I'm alive. And it's because of you, your soldier, Marcus Webb. I read the letter 3 times. Then I put in the logbook between the entry for Corporal Webb and the entry for his twins. Hooks was sitting on my couch, watching football. Henson was in the kitchen, making coffee. Webb, my Webb, the one who'd never left, was reading his paperback in the armchair by the window. You got a letter, he said. It wasn't a question. From you, I said. From the other you, the one who went home. He nodded slowly. He remembers. He remembers me. Of course he does. You're the reason he exists. I looked at my 3 soldiers. The ones who'd followed me down the mountain. The ones who'd sat beside me on the plane. The ones who'd eaten my mother's baklava and listened to my father's stories and refused to fade, even when a mountain pulled. Are you real? I asked. Any of you? Or are you just memories I'm holding on to? Webb closed his book, looked at me with eyes that had seen a mountain try to eat his soul, and a sergeant refused to let it. Sergeant, he said, what's the difference? I didn't have an answer, but I didn't need one, because Henson was singing in the kitchen. Off-key, country western, the worst rendition of Jolene I had ever heard in my life. And for the first time in a long time, I laughed.